Thanks to the Oklahoma City Thunder's victory over the Indiana Pacers last night in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, the Thunder will presumably be getting an invitation to the White House to celebrate their championship. But here on the Energy Detox, we're going to focus on a different team that's also based in Oklahoma City, and that is arguably more worthy of an invitation to the White House for something that they achieved recently. And that team is the Expand Energy drilling team and its various service providers who helped drill a record-setting Marcellus well down in West Virginia recently. And that well reached out over 5 miles, setting U.S. land records for length of well, length of lateral, longest bit trip, longest 24-hour and 48-hour footage, all kinds of tremendous records that, again, you could argue is probably more impactful for your average American than the Thunder's victory last night, notwithstanding the millions of people, of course, who enjoy watching the NBA and enjoyed watching the Thunder beat the Pacers last night. All that being said, what Expand Energy has done and continues to do has tremendous impact on Americans from an energy standpoint, obviously, especially here as we navigate a pretty intense heat wave in much of America, and as we navigate energy security matters thanks to the events that occurred this past weekend. That being said, are we doing enough to celebrate natural gas? And I'll let you answer that question because here on the Energy Detox, we're not again going to spend all of our time talking about natural gas either and all of its benefits and how, again, it makes America stronger because of, again, the types of things that Expand Energy is doing. No, today on the Energy Detox, we're going to come back to our mission, that being helping you as a leader in the oil and gas industry be more effective, be more conscious, and in turn, help yourself and help your team continue building upon the successes that you've had, much like the success that the Thunder had and that Expand Energy has had. But before we do that, I need to give full credit to Jason Spiess, host of The Crude Life, because a couple days ago, I happened to be a guest on The Crude Life, and we were talking about Expand Energy's record-setting well, and ultimately Jason said, hey, wait a second, we celebrate at the White House all kinds of sports teams after they win championships. Why doesn't President Trump invite Expand Energy to, again, tout this achievement? So this idea that we're talking about today, again, is not unique to me. Again, I need to give full credit to Jason Spiess there. And I also need to add one final point, and that is Expand Energy's well, which again was on the order of 5+ miles. If you were to drill a well on the White House lawn down and out 5 miles in any direction, you essentially could reach any part of Washington, D.C., or at least under Washington, D.C., and in essence, figuratively, drain the swamp, if you will, underneath Washington, D.C., just as a 5-mile lateral can drain the reservoir, the Marcellus natural gas from underneath a vast area, and in turn, have a very small environmental footprint, which of course is one of the many benefits of drilling these extended laterals. So again, that being said, setting aside the operational matters, the political matters, the sports matters, what's the point today? Well, the point is to use this whole concept of inviting people and celebrating achievements to help make sure that you are more effective when it comes time for you to acknowledge other folks. And to do that, we're going to start first with this concept of the microphone. Because, no doubt if you've seen any of those, short videos when teams are invited to the White House, it's all about who gets the microphone, right? People passing it around, saying silly things, maybe cracking a couple jokes. But it's always interesting to see who gets that microphone, who gets to speak. And from an Expand Energy standpoint, it was interesting to see who got to speak, figuratively speaking at least, in their press release, or at least who was quoted. Because there was no mention in Expand's press release about this record-setting well of the COO or a VP. No, it was all about a drilling engineer. It's a drilling engineer who's quoted there, and it's a drilling engineer who essentially has the microphone and is giving thanks to all of the third parties who helped make this well possible, and who's giving thanks to upper management and certainly other folks at Expand for making this record-setting well possible. And so think about that in your own world, in your own company. How often when it comes time to celebrate something, do you go with the default? And that is, the highest person available is there to do what they do and take the microphone, hand out some praise, some thanks, maybe a bonus, maybe a gift card, maybe something like that. But typically, again, it's the highest person because that seems like the right thing to do. But what Expand did is really something that I encourage you to think about, which is who else can be the person with the microphone offering thanks? It doesn't have to be somebody from the top. In fact, maybe the person on the top needs to get a little thanks from somebody who's more on the front lines. That's differentiated leadership. And when I see that in action, again, it's amazing how often, now again, this isn't for everybody. Not everybody likes the spotlight, but it's amazing how you might get different insights, different color, if you allow somebody else to give thanks. So ask yourself again, no doubt, I would hope here in short order, you'll have something to thank somebody for, whether it's a third party, whether it's somebody internally. And if you have an opportunity to give somebody else the opportunity to say thanks before you do, well, take advantage of that opportunity. Give them the microphone. Again, that is a win, 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 all kinds of people winning when you take that responsibility and hand it off to somebody else. So take a page from Expand, ask who you can give that microphone to next time you need to give praise for some sort of internal or external accomplishment. Item number 2 here, in terms of practical things that you could do from a leadership standpoint under this umbrella of invitations and making sure that the praise and the spotlight is as effective as possible. And that is, of course, to lean into this concept of, hey, you know what? We're not done yet. How often when a team wins do they say, hey, you know what? We're not done yet. We're ready for next year, right? We're ready to repeat or three-peat in some cases. And certainly in the world of sports, I think that's common, right? To say, we are not done yet. Oil and gas, same thing. I have no doubt that Expand Energy is out there saying, hey, we are not done yet. We're going to keep setting records. I have no doubt about that. Again, given the industry that I've been privileged to serve here in multiple capacities for the last 20 years. But here's where I am concerned, and here's where people do miss the boat a little bit, and where I don't want you to miss the boat. It's the fact that other parties are not done yet. Other teams are not done yet. It's very easy when you're, on cloud 9 and you're getting all these accolades to say, hey, we're going to keep working hard. We're going to work harder than ever. We're not going to rest on our laurels. But what that also needs to mean is, we're not going to forget that there's other parties who are trying to do similar things as us. The Thunder are obviously thinking, hey, the Pacers are going to be, even more I don't want to say agitated, but more motivated to come at us next year and emerge victorious. So again, I think, make sure you're asking yourself that. But in an oil and gas context especially, ask yourself, hey, in what ways are we resting on our laurels and saying, look, you know what? We've proven once again that we are the best. And from an industry-wide standpoint, not just a company-wide standpoint, from an industry-wide standpoint, how often do you hear leaders in the industry talk about the fact that, well, renewables, they can't compete from a math standpoint, from an energy standpoint, from a cost standpoint, wind and solar in particular, they just can't compete. But how often do you hear that same leader express confidence in what he's saying or she's saying by throwing the word yet in there? They can't compete yet. Now, are they ever going to be able to compete at the same level that oil and gas can? Again, from a reliability standpoint, from an affordability standpoint, I don't know. But a leader, a coach, an owner, who doesn't firmly believe that there's other industries, there's other companies, there's other teams out there that are gunning for you at all times, if you don't believe that they're going to find a way to try and win, well, again, you're obviously setting yourself up for long-term failure. You're setting yourself up for not being able to build on your current successes if you're not focused on the fact that other people are also not done yet. That being said, the third and final energy, sports, leadership note for today revolves around this idea of false hurdles. And this is a concept, again, I got to give full credit where it's due. This morning on the radio, folks talking about the Thunder victory, they talked about how often in sports teams use these false hurdles, these false chips on their shoulders to make it seem like they overcame something that they really didn't overcome. How often do you hear a team say, hey, you know what, everybody counted us out, or nobody believed in us, nobody thought that we could emerge victorious, when the reality is, they were a favorite. They should have won. The betting markets, had them, again, as the odds-on favorite for months. Well, in the case of the Thunder, I did not hear any examples, have not heard any examples of them throwing out these false hurdles. And on the radio again this morning, they weren't either. But they were talking about the fact that so often you do hear that though, right? How often, again, like a Travis Kelce after Kansas City wins, 1 or 2 championships, say, yeah, nobody counted on us, or they didn't think we could do it. And people saying, well, are you crazy? Like, of course, everybody thought you could do it. So make sure, again, when you have achievements and you've done well, don't undercut what people are understandably applauding by making it sound like, you achieved more than you really did, or you overcame some sort of hurdle that really wasn't there. So, that being said, ask yourself, what else can you do when it comes to this idea of inviting others and giving praise and making sure that, the right folks are in the conversation about the accomplishments that had been achieved, and of course, more significantly, the future accomplishments that you hope to achieve. And with that, again, I guess the final sort of call to action today is, well, ask yourself, what kind of praise and feedback can you give to somebody else here? That maybe they might not be expecting. Certainly the Thunder expecting this. I think Expand Energy undoubtedly, would expect plenty of accolades for their accomplishment. But, who in your sphere of influence on your personal life and your professional life is out there that, maybe could use a little bit of recognition today? Go forth, give them that recognition. And with that, congrats to Expand Energy. Congrats to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Energy Detox.